All right, now it's time for our special guest. I mentioned earlier that you'll have the opportunity to hear from and ask questions of some of the brightest minds in the country, perhaps in the world, about space exploration and other aspects of science and technology. Adam Hott is our next guest. I'm going to put my glasses on for this because I don't want to get any of this wrong. Adam is he's with Expanding Solutions, expert and digital applications lead at HudsonAlpha Institute for Biotechnology. He's not here in person, but he's traveling right now, but he is joining us via video. Through the magic of television, we can watch him on these monitors. So direct your attention to the monitors, and he'll have an important message for us. And then we get to talk back to him after this. We are going to do a live Q&A after the video presentation. So be prepared. Get your questions ready. All right?
Welcome, Space Apps participants and everyone that's involved with the Space Apps Challenge. Thank you so much for being here. My name's Adam Hott. I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to be there today in person. I'm actually in California at a genetic conference, if you can believe it. But I welcome you to this challenge. You're going to have an amazing few days. I'm going to show you a little bit about what we've done with our application Touching Triton, which is a space-based serious game that teaches about genetics, the environment, and common complex diseases. By the end of the video that you're about to see, I hope that you can take home messages like how many people were involved in this, the incredible diversity of interactions that go on, the thought process, and how we started not with the end in mind really. We actually started with something very simple that we just built upon. Often that is how you actually end up with success, is you don't start with exactly what you think you're going to create in the end, but you end up exploring, open to the ideas, and you let things happen naturally. It's exactly how Touching Triton was made. That's why we have over 30,000 student users. That's why it's meeting its learning objectives. So I hope out of the end of this video, you see that journey, you're inspired by that journey, and you know that you can do that too.
In the near future, 6 explorers embark on an epic space mission. Over the next 20 years, the small crew will travel to a moon of Neptune called Triton, one of the furthest points in our solar system. There they will spend 2 years setting up a small base camp before making the long journey home, setting the stage for missions beyond the boundaries of our solar system. Common diseases like diabetes, colon cancer, and heart disease are often only peripherally discussed in the high school classroom. Teaching students how to identify risk for these common complex diseases laid the foundation for Touching Triton. Students are challenged with large data sets to analyze and interpret throughout the gameplay. Learning transcends a Bloom's taxonomy model from basic knowledge acquisition to metacognitive creation. Real-time feedback allows students to make their case and decide if the mission outcome was an outlier, if they made the right call, or just got lucky. The mission can even be repeated to test for different outcomes, or compared with other missions in the classroom as a final analysis. Students evaluate data, assign risk, and pack for the entire crew. In this single user mode, a student must weigh the relative risks against the limited space available. For instance, is it better to pack a supply of heart medication for a potentially at-risk crew member, or pack an exercise bike that could potentially benefit all crew members for various risks? Alternatively, in multi-user mode, each student is assigned one of 6 crew members. This team scenario requires students to work together when packing, presenting evidence to other team members to justify their choices and find common ground. When students are empowered to make critical judgments based on limited data with variable outcomes, this is a component of their mission. The work done in each layer is interdependent, each section revealing more of the genetic, environmental, and historic picture. The final launch is similar to the results of an experiment to include validation as well as unexpected results. The final feedback from the mission provides students with results that require interpretation and analysis. An entire classroom is monitored and managed by the teacher dashboard, allowing an instructor to see progress, accuracy, choices, and notes of all ongoing missions. The environment of metagame knowledge and discussion helps students understand the decisions they are making. In Touching Triton, students are encouraged to engage and wrestle with authentic scientific data in an immersive game environment.
From humble beginning to out of this world. Many of the greatest achievements have very humble beginnings. Gregor Mendel was a humble monk who spent time contemplating garden life. Countless plantings and observations led to a small publication in a science journal that was lost for over 40 years before it was found. From this humble beginning arose an entire scientific field. Educators have been teaching Mendelian genetics for years and years. Most teachers have a solid grasp of how it works, making Punnett squares and calculating simple frequencies of expected offspring. There are countless classrooms teaching this with examples like sickle cell anemia, cystic fibrosis, and Huntington's disease. Unfortunately, these are all rare examples of how human traits are influenced by genetics. The vast majority of human traits are impacted by many genetic and environmental factors and have some yet unexplained tie to family history. So, we're left with a question. How do we teach about common complex diseases like diabetes, cancer, and heart disease? What do we say about the genetics of those diseases? And how to wrestle with the complicated task of thinking about lifetime risk for these diseases? This is the story of how a humble shower curtain turned into an online serious game teaching about common complex disease risk.
I'd not been with the educational outreach team for long and was so impressed with the newly developed disorder detectives kit. What about something like that writ large? My initial idea was a giant karyotype where students could flag particular regions of a chromosome that impact risk for disease. I put together a quick prototype and took the idea to the team. This was the humble beginning. Yes, a shower curtain. The first attempt was a shower curtain with hand-drawn ideograms, some game cards, and a whole pack of Post-it notes. From the initial idea, the risky business activity was developed. The team developed characters, medical profiles for them, genetic analyses, and risk scenarios. Here was the initial idea. Each disease would be color-coded, and students would flag genetic risk factors next to the chromosomes. Environmental risk factors would be flagged next to a chart of possible contributors. It'll look something like this, I said. I was quickly introduced to the concept of angry fruit salad. In the capable hands of the media manager at the time, the final result was much more eye-pleasing and took the form of wall-sized stickers. The wall stickers needed to be painstakingly attached to magnetic whiteboards, always a two-man job. The flag shapes with magnetic strips glued to the back, all handmade. I went to work developing risk cards, disease backgrounds, student worksheets, and teacher directions. 8 diseases, multiple SNP cards for each disease, lists of environmental contributing factors, and the daunting task of trying to explain odds ratios to students with limited mathematical language. I had a lot to learn. The first risky business activity was run with 90 high school students from across the region as part of DNA Day 2010. A scaled-down version was available for the public in the afternoon festivities. During those presentations, the phrase, "It's complex," along with a sassy hand-on-the-hip gesture, was used so frequently it became attached to the activity. It mostly worked. The concept engaged students, and there were rich conversations about those complex interactions between genes and environmental factors. We got even more positive feedback using the activity with groups of international students as part of the annual Honeywell Leadership event, and with teachers involved in our 2-week professional development workshop, GTAC. When can we get this? They'd ask each year. There were problems with risky business. Giant wall stickers that had to be peeled and stuck each time, dozens of cards that had to be sorted and categorized, hundreds of foam flags that had to be cut and glued, envelopes and worksheets and directions, the materials, all those materials. Where much of the real value of the activity lies not in moving flags, but the conversations that happen among participants as they wrestle with where to place those flags.
Late in 2008, we became aware of a National Institutes of Health grant called the Science Education Partnership Award, or SEPA for short. Two of us decided to attend the annual SEPA conference in mid-2009, where we were introduced to the types of projects that the program was funding at the time. We realized that this grant was just the kind of thing we were looking for to get moving on large-scale, nationally competitive grant processes. We knew that we needed to be competitive for these kinds of grants, but no one had ever been the lead on this large of a grant before. Regardless of our inexperience, we forged on and chose to write the grant based on the idea that risky business should be in classrooms around the country. We knew the material-heavy nature of risky business would not work in the modern classroom, so we went out on a limb and put together an outline for an online version called It's Complex. It's Complex looked exactly like risky business with some updated graphics. We even planned on using the same character profiles, data cards, and disease information we'd made for risky business. The major difference would be that all that data would be readily available at the click of a button. Initially, we thought that It's Complex would be straightforward to develop, because we had so much of that data created already. We submitted our grant, albeit with much worry and fussing, to the powers that be at the National Institutes of Health on July 11, 2010. And began the long wait to hear back on our score. We waited what seemed like an eternity, even if it was only a few months. We received our score in early November, but none of us knew what that score meant. Through some conversations with colleagues outside of HudsonAlpha, we learned that we had a favorable score and that we were likely to get funded. We did indeed receive funding on May 1st, 2011. Now the work had to begin. As a new SEPA awardee, we traveled to Seattle to the annual SEPA conference in early May. While there, we talked with a wide variety of team online interactives. It became quite apparent that we needed something more than It's Complex. We wanted that wow, that engaging, I want to play this moment to strike the students. On the plane ride home, the transition from online interactive to a serious game was begun.
The story became not about a patient in a doctor's office, but about a set of explorers about to embark on an epic space mission. Over the next 20 years, a crew of 6 will be traveling to a moon of Neptune called Triton, one of the furthest points in our solar system. There they will spend a couple of years setting up a small base camp or waiting before making the long journey home. The mission sets the stage for future manned missions beyond the boundaries of the solar system. With the storyline set, the project was ultimately renamed Touching Triton. In Touching Triton, you take on the role of analyzing medical and genetic information about the crew and assessing their risk in a set of complex diseases. This risk assessment becomes vital information when you are tasked with helping pack the Argos, the ship that will be carrying the crew to Triton and back to Earth. Bound by real-world constraints, you do not have room to pack everything, but rather have to select wisely from a menu of medical and other items that may help prevent or treat disease. The game concludes with the launch of the Argos, and you are then able to follow along as the ship and crew make their trip and keep track of what problems arise and the health status of each crew member. Over the past 3 years, Touching Triton has been brought to life through the hard work of a multidisciplinary team. A visual design team helped create the look and feel of the activity, from color palette and theming to all the little extras like ship design, mission patches, and pins that helped make the storyline even more engaging and believable. Meanwhile, a team of computer programmers took our written ideas for how we wanted the activity to function and made it work on computers and tablet devices. In fall of 2012, a film crew and a set of talented actors quite literally brought the activity to life at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. Each crew member now had a face, story, and personality to go with their name and medical data. Behind the scenes, an enormous amount of medical data was being collected and organized, anchoring the activity in real-life risk factors for disease and options for treatment and prevention. We knew from the beginning that it would be critical to have teacher and student involvement throughout the development process. 3 pilot schools graciously allowed access to student groups throughout each iteration of the activity. Then in the summer of 2013, a group of educators from across Alabama came to HudsonAlpha for a 2-day training on the activity. This group, called the Touching Triton Early Adopters, were tasked with using the activity in their classrooms the following year and helping gather evaluation data. An external evaluation team has been involved in collecting data from these students and teachers, making observations of groups interacting with the activity. This data has provided valuable insight into things that work, as well as areas for improvement. Thinking back to when our project team sat down together for the first time and began talking about all the facets of the project, we didn't yet have a clear vision for what Touching Triton would ultimately look and be like. But 3 years later, it's incredible to see just how far the project has come. And now we can confidently say that this is Triton.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Argos 1. You're now part of the most sophisticated space mission in the history of mankind. For the next 20 years, our crew will be traveling over 4 billion kilometers away. 9 years in deep space. Let me introduce you to the largest of Neptune's moons. This is Triton.
So you've seen the journey we've taken. You've heard from our project managers and how we actually created Touching Triton. I want you to go out, find that passion, build that app, build that program, create what you know you can. Be creative, work together. And then when you're done, get up on that stage, present, know what you're going to say, do it with passion. And as you explore your career, as you explore these opportunities, you know, Huntsville's a great place to be. We're a fantastic city surrounded with incredible people, and it's a smart place.
And thank you to Adam Hott for that. Very amazing. I didn't consider that, but you know, it's something to think about as I trip over the monitor. I just thought there'd be some guy with a tricorder, and if some guy named Bones would wave a paperweight over your forehead, and you'd be healed. But that's not how it's working. We have Dr. Hott on the phone with us, I believe. And we're going to open up the audience questions for him. If you have any questions about what you've just seen, raise your hand and I'll come by with the microphone. I'll do my best Phil Donahue impression for those of you old enough to remember that. And we'll take some questions. Anyway, okay, we have a first question over here. Your name and what's your question?
Yeah, my name is Michael, and I was wondering what your experience was with pitching this application. Like, how did you describe you know, what the end product was going to be, and how did you communicate that vision? I find that's usually like the most difficult part.
All right, thanks, Michael. Appreciate that question. And welcome, everybody. Good morning. Sorry I couldn't be there with you today. I'm actually in California today, so I'm glad that I was able to contact you via phone. So, Michael, let me answer your question. What we started with was nothing like what we ended with. And that's fairly true for, I think, almost any big project like that. Our first pitch was actually to a group that we got funding from. And when we made the initial pitch to them, there was a little bit of hesitancy on whether or not we were going to have something that was too much of a game and too little education. We promised them basically on our word that we would try to make a good balance. It was received well, and we ultimately went forward with it. From there, probably the next pitch was actually to our friends at Lockheed Martin, and that actually took 4 different meetings to explain to them really what we were trying to do and how it was different than other things they might have seen before in education. Ultimately, give up.
There you go. Never give up. Great advice. We have another question. Hang on a second. I'm running. Your name and your question.
Hi, my name is Nick, and I'm interested in bioinformatics, and this game sounds amazing to me. I sure wish I had it when I got to play it when I was a high school student, or not. I'm guessing this is for high school students. But my question though is, have you considered putting bioinformatics into this game, allowing the players to solve some of these problems with genetics through programming, as opposed to other forms? It looks like you have a lot of options for players in this game, though.
Nick, thanks, and I appreciate your interest in bioinformatics. And so I can't believe you actually asked that question. That's fantastic. We are the recipient, as of about a month ago, a brand new 5-year grant to develop another series all around bioinformatics and DNA analysis. So we're going to spend the next years developing a whole new application. We're calling it Filtered. And at this point, I can tell you very little about it because it's not been released yet, other than that project is going to focus specifically on looking at an unknown pathogen that you have to use bioinformatics to find out what it is or what's most closely related to, and then also do some deep human bioinformatics work, learning DNA analysis and filtering of sequence to find rare that exist in the population that tell you why some people are resistant to that pathogen and why others aren't. So look forward to that. It is coming, and we're going to not implement that into Touching Triton. We didn't find a natural place to really put that in at this point, but we're developing an entire new game solely for that purpose.
Fantastic. Any other questions? Okay, hold on. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Andrew, and Adam, I had a question. How many people first started working on the app? How many are working on it now? And can you talk a little bit about your team cohesiveness, how you guys get along? Do you do any team building, stuff like that? Thank you.
Sure. So the original team, thanks Andrew, the original team was really a small group. We had I guess really 3 of us that were the primary drivers for the storyline, the grant, the science, and that was built very, very intentionally because each of us had a little bit different skill set. We spent hours and hours and hours every week in a room together working on this for months. So although there was no specific team building for those early interactions, of that core, we spent so much time together that it kind of became that. Now the larger group grew from there. So a few months in, we brought in our visual design people, we brought in our videographer and our media person, we brought in our educators, we brought in a whole slew of other tangential people, our programmers, those kinds of things. So we brought in a larger team. We met at least once a year in person. We had a whole evaluation team who came in as part of that as well. At the end of the day, Touching Triton had close to 60 individuals that were on the team of development and dissemination, which is a lot of people. Now that didn't happen overnight. That was the cumulative effect of our 5 years of work. If you're looking at what it takes to keep your team cohesive and what it takes to keep your team going, it's communication. It's the key to every single thing that I've ever done in my entire career. You have to be able to communicate with one another, and you have to be willing to have those really honest conversations, even when they're difficult.
All right, I know we had another question over here. Yes, sir.
My question is related to something the folks in the challenge are going to have to probably do. When you had to connect with people that had a skill set outside of what you brought to the table, let's say design or videography or something like that, what was your approach to finding the other teammates to bring in to fill those skill sets?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jay. So, if there are young people in the audience, start right now. Start networking. Find people at Space Apps skill sets you don't. Introduce yourself, exchange information. We were fortunate enough that amongst our original kind of subset team of 3, and then it became 5 and 6, we were able to use our own network to find those other people. Sometimes that was a cold call. Sometimes it was I don't know this person, but 2 people that know this person know me. We used a casting agent in Huntsville, and that was interesting because I didn't know those people. But we used them, and they got us great actors. About building your network.
Any other questions for Adam? Going once, going twice. All right. Adam, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a great weekend. Good luck. I know you guys will do a great job.
All right.